Hi, everyone, and welcome to Dr. Riddle, Vice Dean for Strategy at George Washington University. Please, you're welcome to join the stage, Dr. Riddle.
All right, well, the hard part's over, just getting up to the podium. I hope everyone can hear me. It's such a pleasure to be here today in this great virtual world. I'd like to thank the Creative Ed Universal team for putting together such an inspiring conference and for giving us the opportunity to really talk to you today about a topic I'm quite passionate about, stackable credentials. So in this presentation, I thought we kind of do three things. I thought first I'd draw on recent surveys by Pearson, a global education company, to examine changes in market demand for non-traditional credentials. Then I'd like to share with you a little bit about my university's response to these challenges, which is a stackable graduate portfolio based on a large foundation of graduate certificates that all stack into each other and into our master's degree programs. First, we'll talk about how we did it, and then I'd like to share with you some of the results and the impacts that we've witnessed to date. And just a caveat here, or a preface, just to say I'm not trying to advocate that this is the way that every school has to do it. This has been given our unique situation in the marketplace, our particular response to it. But I'm hoping that by talking about our thinking through some of these market trends and our decisions about how to respond, for those of you that are thinking about creating stackable credentials or expanding your stackable credential structures, that you might get some inspiration or some new ideas. And I hope in the Q&A we can get some ideas from the audience too, and hear about how some of your institutions are responding or thinking about responding. All right, so let me go to the next slide. Oh, looks like the slide presentation is not, there we go. Okay, it looks like it's all the way at the end. Just give me 1 second. I'm giving you all a preview of what you're going to see, so. All right, there we go. Let's talk about why we build stackable credentials. So first, let's talk about the learner. A growing number of learners expect anywhere, anytime, and any size learning. It's being driven, I think, by 4 key universal trends. Trend number 1, do it yourself everything. Other industries like healthcare and IT have been transformed as consumers are no longer dependent on traditional intermediaries. And the same applies to traditional institutions of learning. Pearson's Global Learner Survey research shows that 41% of those employed around the world are finding free information and training on the internet and self-teaching. Trend number 2, immediate gratification. Thanks to Netflix and YouTube, people are used to consuming content at the drop of a hat. You can watch shows and movies from anywhere on any device, and this has also manifested itself in courseware and on-demand classes. Trend number 3, global mobility. Prior to the pandemic, much was written about tech nomads, people who were not restricted by physical boundaries in terms of where they worked and lived. So as long as they had a computer and a reliable Wi-Fi connection. And of course, this has only been accelerated by the pandemic. And education is really no different. So just to take a North American example, 35 million people in the United States live in what we call higher education deserts. But about 3 in 4 say that online learning will give people more access to it. Also with the pandemic, we've seen less of a focus on traditional degrees and more of a focus on the affordability of a college education or lack thereof. And lastly, trend number 4, constant reinvention. The notion of a 40-year career is dead. It's estimated that most people will hold about 12 jobs between the ages of 18 and 48. Few are working in fields that they majored in, and tech disruption means that people need to constantly be learning and reinventing themselves in order to stay relevant and remain employed. Learners are also starting to rethink the value of traditional degrees and pathways to obtain education. We're starting to see measurable attitudes towards higher education shifting, with a greater focus on short and stackable credentials. In Pearson's Alternative Credentials Emerging Fields Survey, more people are agreeing to or neutral to the statement that alternative credentials will replace college degrees than what we've seen in the past. So let's look at some of these key statements from the Learner Survey and the US Learner Response from Pearson's Global Learner Survey. 58% say that area more willing to pursue a shorter term credential over a degree program. 57% said that they would prefer competency-based short courses rather than commit to a university degree. 53% stated that alternative credentials are a better option than degrees to grow their careers. Partnering with this, learners increasingly like the idea of stackable degrees, and this can be taken further with the idea of stackable smaller credentials, like boot camps and short course programs. Another interesting point is that learners are increasingly interested in digital badging, in addition to or instead of a diploma for all types of program completion evidence, and as milestones along the way to a degree. Finally, smaller credentials are helpful in helping learners afford their education. It might also be a good alternative to a full degree for some people and in some cases. But what do employers think? I think this is really very interesting. Pearson's study showed that employers' opinions on non-degree education is also shifting. The survey revealed that an 11% increase between 2019 and early 2021 of employers hiring non-degree credential holders. Still, whatever the credential, it needs to be relevant and directed to real-world work, and the credential must match the business application. But it's not just an increased need for certificates. Pearson's 2021 employer survey shows an overall increased preference for additional education across all types. One striking finding, I thought, is that there's an overall increase in educational need for master's and alternative credentials over the last 2 years. So the skill gap is driving this. Most jobs will really see an overall increase in the number of skills that are required. Upskilling driven by business need and reskilling driven by pandemic job sector loss is creating a space for shorter term credentials. And the skills gap is expected to grow, and learners and employers will need appropriate and agile learning methods to address them. Alternative credential programs can precisely target immediate workforce need. They are less expensive, often are taught on demand, and can be low commitment. Alternative credentials, especially from trusted institutions, help show employers the proof of learning. So given all of this, how are institutions responding? The credentials engine has been doing accounts of all types of degrees and alternative credentials in the US since 2017 at Pearson. And they've shared with us the 2021 report was released a few months ago, and I want to share a little bit of that data with you because it's so interesting. Alternative credentials in the non-academic space have increased remarkably over the last year. Digital badging is up 99%, almost a 32% increase in MOOCs, et cetera. And the non-academic space is way outpacing the traditional post-secondary space by a little over 3-to-1. Increase in demand from both learners and employers for more flexible and affordable education opportunities is creating the environment where non-traditional institutions now hold the majority of the alternative credential space. College and university certificates have not been pacing the same as non-university alternative credential grantors, And academia really needs to meet learners and employer demands in a more consumer-driven market. Now, this isn't to say that there isn't space for traditional degree paths, far from it. But as we saw in the previous slide, all degree and alternative credential types are growing in importance to employers. Institutions need to consider paths to meet both of these driving demands with its current diversification of degree and non-degree offerings, and do it well with the same measured care as degree programs. So if you take a look at these survey results that we've talked about and other research really about the future of work, it kind of suggests a couple of things. I think first, it suggests that institutions should really be helping learners navigate their educational and career options, empowering them to learn on their terms and get the skills that they need to secure a future. And they can do that by building a strategy that includes exclusive content in in-demand skill areas, personalized high-quality learning experiences, program skills and outcomes directly tied to employment goals, stackable and flexible course options mapped to their degree portfolio. And this means of building affordable, relevant, and diverse portfolio of non-degree learning solutions, building a personalized and outcome-oriented learning experience, and creating flexible learner progression paths and program recognition. So next, I'd like to share with you how my institution has started to respond to these trends. We're still in early stages of this, but we've had some really remarkable, I think, market response to some of these changes. So let me give you a little bit of a background. In 2018, George Washington School of Business undertook a complete reimagination of our graduate portfolio. This included revising our MBA and most of our specialized master's degrees, launching 3 new master's programs, and creating 27 stackable graduate certificates. If you can see in the chat, I actually put prior to the presentation a link to the website that lists these different graduate certificates, and you can learn more about that. But in this presentation, I'm just going to focus on the process and the impact of creating these stackable graduate certificates. Let's turn first to how did we design the curriculum without spending a ton of money. That's always the big objective, right? So I think the first step really was creating a stackable home in each degree. We decided that we were going to create our unit of analysis, if you will, was going to be a graduate certificate of 12 credit hours. Each course is 3 credit hours in our graduate system. So a graduate certificate consists of 4 courses. So we needed to look at each one of our master's degrees. We have 6 formats of the MBA and now 12 specialized masters. So we worked with the faculty in each one of these degree programs to figure out, do they have space, particularly in the elective set, to open up 12 credit hours to allow the graduate certificates to snap in. Because in our system, the students earn a graduate certificate alongside of their traditional master's degree program. So the first step was really figuring out where we could create a home in each degree for one of these or more of these certificates. The second step, and this is really the most time-consuming step, but it's the critical step, is really putting in the time to do the research. We had a task force that undertook a future of work assessment, gathering secondary data about the skills gap and what's needed to fill it in the workforce. Then we executed a multi-stakeholder survey, a survey of our major employers for our students, our faculty, our current students, and our alumni, and queried them about what types of course topics they thought should be core to a given degree program, what should be elective, and what were the topics that they thought would be in most demand for workforce readiness. We then compared that data, looking at how our stakeholders thought about the skills gap to what the secondary data was telling us about the skills gap. And we identified a core list of theory and skills that we thought the managers of today and tomorrow really needed. And then we set about step 3, and you can see in the symbol there, lots of sticky notes. That is no joke. We literally put each course we currently teach on a sticky note. We had in the research phase, we had also looked back at seat availability in each one of these courses on average over a 3-year period. And we wrote that on the sticky note. So we were able to look at how much seat availability did we have in each one of our existing graduate courses, and we put them all up on a board. We then looked at what were these skill needs, what were these theory needs that the employers and our stakeholders were telling us were important. And then we looked back at our courses. What did we already have that had seat availability in particular, or maybe we just needed to make more seat availability by offering an additional section, and we would add it to a graduate course stack. So take, for example, one of the things that we heard from our employers was artificial intelligence was important. So we looked back and worked with our faculty, identify what are the courses that could provide a little bit of the theory, the methods, and some application in terms of helping learners get a good, deep introduction to the world of artificial intelligence from a managerial perspective. We selected those courses, and we also realized we had a gap in an area that we needed to build a new course. And we created a 4-course sequence in artificial intelligence. We then went back to all of our degree programs where we had made those homes, and we asked the question, would an artificial intelligence graduate certificate make sense as a snap-in to that particular degree program? And if so, we added it to the list of graduate certificates that now could stack into that degree program. All of the graduate certificates that we created snap into all of our MBA formats. But we have some shorter lists of graduate certificates for some of our specialized masters, given their sort of specialty of focus. So as I mentioned, a graduate certificate stack then has 2 components. It has a set of core courses. These are courses that all students take together. They must take these courses, and they do get a little bit of customizability just in that one elective. Why do we structure it this way? We structured it this way because it was already complicated enough with 27 graduate certificates. I wanted to also make sure that we were minimizing our variable costs. Well, all of us know that when you offer an elective, sometimes you're not sure how many people will actually take that particular elective, and it can be very expensive if not a large number do. So we had a limited amount of electives that were available, and instead we had these core courses that we could always count on all students taking. But these courses were specifically selected because they provided theory, methods, and application. Sometimes that looks like one theory course, one methods course, one application course. In others, the theory, methods, and applications are kind of mixed into the courses in equal parts, and lots of other permutations and combinations therein. But regardless, a student should come out of the core of any one of our graduate certificates having a good understanding of the theory, the methods that pertain to that particular area, and get a chance to apply it in a real business solution case that they work on in a particular course, whether that's a problem set, whether that's a live client project, et cetera, some kind of experiential learning. And then they get to take the elective. I should say here too that we have a very active online program at George Washington University, and of the 27, we picked 10 graduate certificates that we thought that would have particularly large markets and were particularly needed for upskilling and reskilling for even postgraduate degree learners. So of the 27, all are available on campus, 10 are available online. But it's not just a matter of going through and creating the curriculum architecture, it's also about preparing your infrastructure to be able to serve this type of student. as well as really create a team that understands that sometimes you're going to have students that just take the certificate, but more often than not, you're going to have students that are using the certificate to sort of try out graduate education and maybe continue on and stack it into a master's degree. So in order to really prepare your infrastructure, you need to work with your admissions and recruiting team to really create a more student-centered recruitment conversation. Instead of saying, we offer these two programs, now let me tell you how that could be a fit with you. The conversation now is very different with our recruitment team because we have so many different options. The recruitment team really has a conversation first and foremost with the student about who are you right now? What skills do you want to acquire? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? So that we can then match the various different opportunities that we have to that unique learner's goals. And I think it creates a more personalized, customizable feel to the recruitment process itself. We've had to work with our academic advising team because now they are now part of the recruiting team extension. You know, before you sort of think about, well, you have the students in the system, now you just need to worry about retaining them to complete their master's degree. But now our academic advisors are also talking to graduate certificate pursuers and then talking to them about, well, if you are interested, you have all these different types of options that you can pursue and stack this master's credential now or at some point in the near future into a master's degree. So we've had a lot of training around academic advising in that regard. We've had to really think through our student engagement plans, making sure that we engage particularly graduate certificate students early and often because they're not with us as long as a traditional degree holder. And this student engagement, we found is really critical for conversion. And our career coaches, we've completely reorganized our career center. We have an internal career center in our School of Business. And instead of, we before had coaches that would work with students at different stage in the career, we've now organized them around industries rather than career stage. Now, briefly, I know that we're going to be running close on time because we started a little bit late. Let me tell you a little bit about what we've done here. So I've mentioned it's 27 graduate certificates. And as I said, our graduate certificates are designed to be taken standalone. They're not just things that you do at the end of a graduate degree anymore. They also can be used to glide path into a degree and can be used as a finishing elective set for a degree. All of this allows for us, I think, to really deliver on our promise of lifelong learning. We have alumni that are coming back that have gotten a master's degree from us, but that are coming back to pursue a graduate certificate now for upskilling and reskilling. We have folks coming from the general market as well, doing the same. We have others, though, that are putting their toe in the water. They're not sure whether they can balance life and work and going to school, and the graduate certificate gives them a way to try it on for size. And if they're not able and ready to continue, then at least they come out with a piece of paper that says, I have a graduate certificate in X. If they are able to continue, that all of those credits just stack right into their degree program. We have created most of these graduate certificates, I would say, snap in as elective sets to our degree programs. But we've also, for our MBA, we have created a graduate certificate in quantitative business foundations, which consists of financial accounting, finance, and statistics, as well as one elective. When we have a student that we are not quite sure, say, for example, someone that maybe has been out of school for a long time, maybe didn't do so well in their undergraduate career, but has had 7-10 years of really stellar professional experience. And we're not sure whether because we don't have a lot of recent data about their academic performance, often we'll encourage them to maybe take a graduate certificate instead of just turning down their application. Because we can then see if they're able to maintain a B average in the graduate certificate, then we know they can reapply to the MBA program, and we have a demonstration effect of their ability to really perform in the program itself. So as I mentioned, most of our graduate certificates are leveraging excess seat capacity in our core courses and some of our other programs. We've had to make some additional sections just to accommodate the demand, however. They're all fully stackable, as I mentioned. And one of the things I have not mentioned is that one of our new graduate degrees allows the learner to stack two of these certificates on top of one another and take two electives or a 6-credit-hour master's thesis or master's report program. And then they earn an MS in interdisciplinary business studies. So we found that there are a lot of upskillers and reskillers that really like this. They really like the graduate certificate. So once they've taken one, they can actually apply and to another and actually earn another master's degree. We've also been able to really partner with other schools around the university. We have partnerships with, for example, the medical school as well as the engineering school that provide graduate certificates that our students can also take, and they're included in the list of 27. There are a lot of, I think, positive benefits that have come out of this. I'll just hit some of the highlights given the shortage on time here. But I do believe that this certificate program has improved access to education. As I mentioned, the ability to try on graduate education in a low-risk environment that includes a credential. It allows our students to spread out paying for their cost of their degree, and it makes it a little bit more financially accessible. Professional students can demonstrate that ability to succeed in a degree program in a non-conventional way. But I also think it's helped us a bit to increase equity and diversity. There is an opportunity here now for a graduate certificate learner to demonstrate their ability to succeed, right? That lowers the tuition cost because I'm able to go out and increase the philanthropy potential for scholarships for these graduate certificate learners. And the time to impact may broaden our corporate partners' tuition remission program pool as well. We've seen that with several of our corporate partners. So what's been the impact? 2/3 of our certificate program students have continued on to an associated degree program, meaning master's program. We've witnessed a double-digit overall grad revenue growth. Certificates have been cited as the major decision-making criteria of students that choose to come to GW in just 2.5 years. Most of our MBAs, around 70 to 80% of our MBA students, are completing at least one certificate as part of a degree program. They can complete 2 as part of their degree program. Conversions to degree and equity benefits that I've mentioned before, as I've mentioned, returning alumni, but it's also allowed us to tap into new market segments. We now are bringing in about 15% of our graduate students are 40 years old and older, whereas 2.5 years ago, that was a single-digit number. As I mentioned, they're coming back for lifelong learning. Reports from employers about placement readiness of our students have increased, and we've witnessed double-digit rankings growth in almost every major ranking system out there in just 2.5 years. And I think it's actually really much easier for us to retool and redesign to market responsiveness for a certificate rather than an entire degree program with our faculty. So what's next? We've now launched what we call Stackable Sprints. These are 1-credit-hour courses taught in an intensive format. They vary in terms of whether this is a 2-day, all-day session or whether this is a couple of hours, a couple of days a week. But the sprints stack into and equate to 3 credit hours of a graduate certificate program. Right now, we've been focusing sprints on technical and analytics-focused topics, but we plan to expand into soft skills as well. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I don't know if we still have questions. I know we're at the end of this session, but I'm not sure where we are in time. Could someone from Ed Universal tell me?
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Yes, thank you very much, Leslie. So we have some minutes for the questions. So dear participants, please don't hesitate to ask your questions. You can write them directly in the chat or just raise your hand and Leslie will be happy to answer your question. See that we don't have any questions.